Wednesday. How you doing? It's 10:05. It's Connie with you here in BBC Radio Scotland. On the phone, and we were talking about how are you affording maternity leave, right? We heard from Megan, who spoke about taking 6 months that leave, and she highlighted just how quickly things can change when you stop working. I think many people will resonate with that. Kate told us she was going back to work early and spoke about the cost of formula. I think many people had a sort of idea how much that might cost in their mind, but it's gone up. We're told 7% year on year. Things like formula, nappies, wipes. Really expensive, especially how often you need to buy them, let's be honest. Amanda told us about the difficulties of having children and being self-employed. Keep your thoughts coming in on this. Keep this going. 80295, and thanks to everyone who got in touch. Really interesting chat between 9 and 10. Also, though, coming up before 12...
We're seeking to understand these women and their crimes from the perspective of 21st century feminists.
I'm going to be hearing why author and historian Lucy Worsley is fascinated by lady killers. I'm going to be speaking to her just shortly. And...
Help, I need somebody. Help.
I need somebody to get it going on in this party.
Weekly Consumer Surgery returns, giving you the chance to get advice on any bills, returns, shopping. Martin James will be here to answer any of your questions. Text number 80295, or you can give him a call 08085 92 95 00. Plus, we're going to be talking about the importance of speech therapy. If your child is struggling a little bit, what impact can that have on their confidence? There's many, thousands actually of children on waiting lists at the moment. We're going to be talking about that. And a police investigation has looked at a virtual rape of a girl under 16 years old. So we're going to look at how can we keep our kids safe online, especially when it comes to this sort of VR world. Plus...
Well, saving is the first important step, no doubt. But money is something you should learn more about.
Are Scottish people tight? Are you sick of this trope? A top advertising exec admits Scots are still depicted as tight-fisted. So we're saying, is it time to stop selling these stereotypes?
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
We're also going to be discussing what might happen if you decide to take a bit of a change in your life sort of trajectory. If you're changing plan, I don't know, with things like your job or just a massive life change that you maybe weren't anticipating. What was that like? How did you do it? And would you have some advice for someone else who's thinking about doing the same? Okay, thoughts on that? This is Deacon Blue.
So
BBC Radio Scotland. It's 10 past 10. I hope you're well. Now, our obsession with true crime shows no sign of waning, and it's no different for Lady Killers, one of BBC's top 10 most loved podcast series, and it's now back for a third instalment. Author and historian Lucy Worsley takes on the role of investigator, explaining crimes committed by women in the 19th and 20th centuries through a modern feminist perspective. And Lucy's here to tell me all about it. Morning, Lucy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm excited about this conversation because I've been listening to the podcast.
Ooh, well, you've obviously got very good taste. I approve of this.
Right, tell me first and foremost, right, for people who've not listened to it yet, give us a little bit of a synopsis, if you will, of I guess what you do, what you talk about, and what people would expect to find.
Ooh, yes, we love crime on Lady Killers, and we love it because as historians, when a crime happens, a lot of stuff gets written down that doesn't normally get recorded. And this is stuff like what the people were wearing, what the room was like, but also what jobs they held, what they believed to be true about the world. So it's a fabulous way of digging down into women's lives. So we've used the violent actions of these lady killers to explore what life was like for the whole of the female half of the population in the 19th century. Some of our ladies kill because they're bad and weird, but others kill for all sorts of reasons. We hear reasons like, my children were hungry and I was desperate, or my husband shouldn't have beaten me. It's a wonderful way into the minds of women in the past, we think.
What is it about, and we'll get into the sort of the juxtaposition between this idea of a woman and murder. These two things don't necessarily go hand in hand very often. I think maybe that's why we hear it, we think, oh, that sounds a little bit different. But why in particular did you think about going back the way and looking at the 19th and 20th centuries as the sort of focus to this, rather than maybe looking at, you know, the more present day or modern day versions of these women?
Well, in the 19th and the early 20th centuries, for the first time, you get wonderful resources in the form of newspapers. It's much easier to drill down into the lives of women who weren't aristocrats, and they wouldn't have been members of the cast of Bridgerton. They were normal women, and it's harder to get that level of detail in earlier centuries. And we also think that history is great, you know, because it's not. People think it's all about the past, right? And of course, on one level, it is. But as soon as you start to think about the past, it makes you ask questions about the world we live in today. So on Lady Killers, we do a lot of history, but we always have somebody who's expert in the kinds of issues that are being discussed in the world today. And we discuss, have things really changed? You know, it's quite easy for us to think, oh, those silly old Victorians, we're much better than them. We've got everything sorted out now. But when it comes to pay for women's work, childcare, human rights, no, we haven't. It's quite easy to feel patronising about people in the past, and having a contemporary perspective makes you realise that can be a mistake.
It's interesting, right, because we were talking about, we have a phone in between 9 and 10 this morning. We were talking about maternity pay and the experience that women have whenever they are looking after new young children. And one of the episodes, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but one of the episodes I was listening to, I think it's the most recent one actually, but was a lady, and she had 6 children. And it was this idea of how at that time women were looked upon when it came to, making sure that they had the rights for their children rather than they were the property of the man. And you look back and we're still having this conversation, not to the same extent, but we still have the same conversation however many, 100 odd years later. So what lessons can we or should we be learning from what you've uncovered? Is there anything you've thought, wow, this is really basic stuff?
Oh, not to take things for granted. I mean, it's easy to think now that the case you're referring to is a really, really sad and awful one, where a woman is motivated to do a desperate action by fear of losing her kids. And it's easy. We were joined for that particular episode by Alexandra Wilson, who's a barrister who specialises in criminal and family law now. And she was saying, you might think that this couldn't happen today. Think again. The law is not blind. Sometimes miscarriages of justice do occur. We got to look out for things. We can't. The job of a historian in on one level is to uncover the past, to learn its secrets. But I also think it's to use and to hone important skills, the skills of analysis and the skills of judgment. And we always have to ask ourselves, is this particular source from history lying to us? These aren't just skills for the historian. These are skills for the citizen of the world. History makes you use your brain, think about things a bit harder.
It was interesting as well, I thought, just on that point, about the accuracy of the documents that you've got. There was one where they were talking about the women in politics and the participation level of women in politics. And I think someone had said, well, the assumption was that it wouldn't be necessarily that high. Was it the 1800s, maybe the Civil War time?
Yes. You're talking about our American case. A woman called Mary Surratt is not well known to history. And that's because I think let me explain. She was involved in a plot a successful plot to assassinate the president, President Abraham Lincoln. Now, the trigger was pulled by a man, but he couldn't have done it without his support network. And he was part of this support network. And she was put on trial for having been a conspirator. And I guess that's a little bit surprising in itself. Would you think that women in this particular period of history would have got involved in politics to this level? And then the other thing that was surprising about that case was that I was pretty sure, she'd be put on trial. She had kids. People would have somehow thought, oh, we're going to let her off because she's a wife and a mother. And also, we don't really think that women are capable of doing bad things. Well, do you know what? She did get the death penalty. And maybe that was because she had transgressed so much against the ideal of a 19th century woman as a pure, providing, peaceful sort of person. It's just fascinating. And let me tell you something really cool. Because that case was about a presidential assassination, we were joined by a former special agent with the Secret Service, a fantastic woman who'd been a protector to all the presidents from Bush onwards, I think. It was great to get her insights into what's involved in that job, keeping presidents safe.
Yeah, and with that, I suppose there's this idea of difficult women. Was that the same episodes?
Oh, all of our women are difficult, aren't they? They've all done something. They've all done something bad, I suppose. And one of the sort of really basic points that we want to make is that when we talk about women's history, we don't want to just go, yay, women are great. Look at all of these fabulous women that existed in the past. For women to be accepted as members of the human race, I guess you've got to accept that some of them are going to be bad, some of them are going to be damaged, some of them are going to, women are people. They behave in all the different ways that people behave.
Is this, do you think, what drew you to doing something like this in the first place, and particularly focusing on women and trying in some way to break down this idea that women have to act a certain way, or femininity means that you act in a certain way, which kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier on about this idea we don't necessarily associate women with murder and this type of the thing that goes against nature or mother nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's quite hard for people to get their heads around the idea of a woman who kills. And, in the broader sense, I think it's worth doing, because history in general has been written by the people who've done well out of it, that have tended to be the men. So there's lots of women's stories who just need airing. And we were also really keen to sort of get beyond the idea that a lot of people will be familiar with, that if you're watching a sort of crime drama or you're hearing something about true crime, often the woman's role in that is to be dead. It's to either be running through the woods naked and helpless and terrified, or it's to be a dead body on the slab, and that's where all the action sort of begins. We wanted to look at women who had some, agency. So it's women who had the power to do something.
There's something I think around the ethics of true crime, and this sometimes the we can forget about the families that are involved, the victims, and we have this idea that this is entertainment in some way, forgetting about the reality of what we're looking at, because this is real life for the people that are involved. Is there something about this type of investigation, because there's so much time that's passed, we're talking about, a couple of 100 years ago, that makes that more palatable for people who might enjoy the idea of looking at this in more detail, but maybe the stuff that's more current is just a bit too icky for them?
Absolutely, yeah. I share your kind of feelings of ickiness about the families, people who've survived similar experiences. We have we have 100-year buffer between ourselves and anything that happened. But this phenomenon of it's a guilty pleasure, right? This phenomenon of taking pleasure in bad things that happen to other people, whether that's through true crime or reading journalism or reading detective fiction. It's something that's really tied up with modern life, I think. You only start to get it in culture in the 19th century. And I think that's because in the 18th century, people were living much closer to nature, and their main concerns would have been dying of famine or disease or maybe in a war. But by the 19th century, people in Britain had very often moved to the cities, and here life was cleaner and safer and more comfortable. They had things like drains in their houses, and there was a police force, and this sort of space opened up in their minds for them to have the luxury, because it is a luxury of thinking about bad things happening. I mean, if you live in the developing world, it's likely that your country doesn't have a genre of detective fiction, because who wants to read about death when death is all around you? It's a phenomenon of a developed society.
Exactly. And I think in this job, you're around the real life news a wee bit too often. So sometimes for me, true crime's a bit too sort of close to home in terms of the stuff that you're bombarded with all the time. But this podcast, Lucy, I'm not just saying this because you're on, I really enjoyed it. It's very
Thank you.
It's a different sort of way to look at something that's just you can really get your teeth into. So thank you for coming on and talking about it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was Lucy Worsley there, historian and author, and the new series of Lady Killers with Lucy is available now on BBC Sounds. Definitely worth a listen. Right, it is just coming up to 10:24.
It's another Mozzie podcast. It's like a little club. While you're listening to our best bits, we're probably in the pub. It's all the fun stuff from the show, so listen when you like. At home, at work, or in the car, or even on your bike. The Chris Moyle Show.
Oh, I can't wait for the Scottish Cup to be back this weekend. Before that, though, we're here today. It's Wednesday. You're listening to Mornings with me, Connie McLaughlin. Still to come.
Help! I need somebody to get it going on in this party.
There's something on your mind of a sort of consumer nature, do not fear, right? Because Martin James, our expert, will be here to answer all of your questions. If it's anything to do with bills, returns, shopping rights, anything like that, then he is your man. You can text 80295. That's the best way to get in touch. More music though. This is Madonna on BBC Radio Scotland. This is Living on a Prayer.
Got something to say? Text 80295. Standard message rates apply.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
How you doing? It's just coming up to 10:30. Our consumer surgery is back for 2024. It's going to be back in full swing after 11 o'clock this morning. But we thought we would get you warmed up. Well, actually, we thought we would get our consumer expert, Martin James, warmed up. Martin, morning to you.
Good morning, Connie. Thanks for having me back.
You're very welcome. Right, we've got, I'm assuming, so many things to discuss after 11, right? But I wanted to ask you, first of all, about this potential compensation scheme for cars. Tell us about that, and if anyone's bought a car, was it before 2021?
That's right, yes. Now, this is a really, really dry news story. So you might have seen it, you might have heard it on the radio. And many people who I've spoken to switched off because it's really dull. So I'll do my best to explain it in really simple terms. But basically,
good build up there, Martin. Good build up.
Free money. Focus on that. That's the key part of the sentence. So basically.
Oh no, he built up and then he's gone. Martin, are you there?
And it was prior to 2001. Then there is a possibility that you were overcharged.
Right, wait a minute, Martin. Hold on a second. You cut out a little bit there, so we missed the start of what you were going to say. You had this big build up, and then we lost you. Right, so start again.
My apologies. Maybe I'll do my broadband tips next week as well. So there's basically been an investigation that's found out that many people who have car finance might have been overcharged. Now, this goes back quite a way. We don't really know. They're looking into the matter at the moment. But if you took out a finance deal to get a car in the last, say, 6 years, maybe even longer, and it was prior to 2001, you could be entitled to compensation. Now, as I said, the reasons behind this are beyond boring. But it's to do with commission that's made up a part of the deal that you entered into. So it's really, really hard to know if you're affected. All you need to bear in mind is once the regulator has finished investigating, if they agree, they're going to announce a compensation scheme and you'll be contacted. So ignore those companies that will contact you asking you to sign up and will charge you money. These are claims management companies. You don't need to use them. You just need to sit tight and listen to the radio and we'll fill you in.
Right, okay, so you can't do anything about it just now, you've just got to wait.
Yes. Now, unfortunately, with car finance, these products are literally the most complicated deals on earth. I say generally that they're more complicated than pensions when I have to explain them. So you can still complain about being missold a car finance deal. So if you've taken out a car product and it's too expensive, or they've flogged you loads of insurance products you didn't need, or you can't afford it and they've not been helpful, you can still make complaints about all of those things, completely separate thing, and I would encourage people to do so because I hate these deals. I think they're really, really consumer unfriendly. So if you still feel that you've been stitched up, make a complaint.
Right, and who would they complain to?
So in the most instances, you usually complain to the company that actually sold you the car in the first place. But it might turn out that if you're complaining about the car finance, for example, or about an insurance product, these are what's known as regulated financial deals. So you can go to the free financial ombudsman, which is amazing. It's like a free alternative to the courts, and they can look at your complaints if you get turned down. But don't feel overwhelmed. I mean, my brain hurts when I have to try to explain how these deals work. So if you don't understand stuff, that's perfectly fine. Yeah. If you just feel that you've been treated unfairly, you can make a complaint. This
is sometimes the way that if, certain situations, it makes it very complicated, which means a lot of people will be like, oh, forget about it. I'll just not bother. But you're saying actually sort of push through and just investigate a little bit more because, so on a general basis, what are you talking about compensation-wise if someone's been, is it dependent on the price of the car or...
Yeah, there are all kinds of things that you can complain about. I mean, if you were missold something, you can ask to get out of car finance deals that you can't afford, for example. You can ask for compensation if the company's treated you badly, if it's not been fair to you. Just to give you an example, a friend of mine bought a car a couple of years ago, and they sold him £1,200 worth of add-on insurance policies for things like cracked windscreens or for alloy wheels, because they scared him. They basically said, look, if something happens, you'll have to pay for this when you return the car. So he forks out all of this money, and that's a massive, massive rip-off. This is what's known as upselling in the trade. They get you when you're weak, and they flog you loads of stuff on the off chance that if something goes wrong, you'll end up paying lots of money. It's always worthwhile having a good insurance policy to cover a car that you got on finance.
Right.
But these policies are outrageous, so you can complain about those too.
Okay. Any questions relating to this or anything else of a consumer nature? Martin will be back after 11 o'clock this morning to take your texts, your calls. If you want to send an email, you can do that as well. Give him a text right now, 80295, or you can give him a call, 08085 92 95 00. Martin's going to be back just after 11 o'clock. Coming next, we're going to be talking about the importance of speech when it comes to your children and their confidence. After this, from KD Lang, this is Constant Craving. It's BBC Radio Scotland. Constant Craving by KD Lang. It is 25 minutes to 11 here in BBC Radio Scotland. It's Connie with you until midday today. Now, just how important is the way your child speaks? Not just for their confidence, but also, I guess, general communication. Apparently over 6,500 children in Scotland are currently waiting to make initial contact, right, with speech and language therapists, with the longest wait increasing by over 7.5 months. But what impact can this have on kids that are needing this support and having to wait on it for a really long time? Well, the head of the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists in Scotland is Glenn Carter, and he joins me on the line. Morning, Glenn.
Morning. Hello.
Thanks very much for coming on. And we're going to be talking about a new campaign, Voice Box, that you are part of in just a second. But I also want to introduce Gabby Hearn, who runs 2 early learning centres and who's got 35 years experience in the early learning industry. Morning, Gabby.
Good morning, Connie. Thank you for that introduction.
You were obviously 5 when you started, clearly.
Clearly.
Kathy's also here to tell us about our children's experiences with speech and language. Morning, Kathy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on today.
Thank you for being with us. Right, Glenn, where do we start with this? Because these figures, I mean, looking at it more broadly, just seem pretty alarming. That's an awful lot of kids that are waiting.
Yeah, there is a lot of kids waiting, and I think it's important to say that, you know, health visitors, education staff, speech and language therapists are all telling us there are more children with communication needs than ever before. We did a survey in nurseries, and 89% of those staff said they'd seen an increase or a significant increase. And as you said, there are over 6,500 children waiting for initial contact with a speech and language therapist. And speech and language therapists are keen to help. They're there to help, but the progress is hampered by significant demand, high vacancies and low numbers of speech and language therapists.
So is it just purely down to numbers? I mean, there are people there that are obviously ready, able and willing to take these appointments, but there's just not enough of them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a complicated picture in that there's the pandemic. Coming out of the pandemic, there's been this unprecedented amount of demand. So the demand is enormous, but that's been there for a long time, that demand. But in order to meet the needs of these children, we need good training and opportunities for all staff who work with them every day. We also need support in their placements, nurseries and schools. But in addition, there's some kids that definitely need to be seen by a speech and language therapist. And yes, so there's just not enough of them to do that.
Right. Explain to us then, if maybe, anyone that's listening has not been in the sort of journey of this, at what point would you say, right, my child needs a little bit additional support? What are we talking about here, and what sort of age brackets would you begin to see interventions in that, just more generally?
Well, so when we talk about communication needs, it's a very broad group of people. So there's over 275,000 children and young people with communication needs in Scotland. And what we mean by that is you can have kids with more complex medical needs who perhaps require augmentative communication, so voice output systems, high-tech aids. There's also kids with specific speech and language difficulties, and quite a lot of them, they've been born with these issues. There's genetic element, and they may have difficulties with their speech sounds. They may struggle to understand spoken language and to express it. And also we have in another category, kids with delayed language skills. And we know that in significant areas of deprivation, there's a very high proportion of kids coming to school with inadequate support, with adequate language skills. So actually, it's a good question, but speech and language therapists support children right from birth all the way up for eating and drinking and spoken language. So it does depend on the child and the presentation of their communication difficulty. Okay.
Kathy, explain to us a little bit about your experience of this. What happened, and I guess what was the moment you thought, right, I'm going to need to speak to somebody about this?
Okay, well, I've got 3 children, 3 boys, and the older 2 have both been through speech therapy, and the youngest one actually started. He had his first initial assessment on Monday this week, so it's very, very topical for me. Yeah. My oldest son, he's now 11, and I think the key moment I thought, no, my child needs help, was specifically when I was around having a play date with myself and other 3 mums, and all of our children were born at the same time. We all come from the same kind of socioeconomic background. We were all very similar, and my child was the one who nobody could understand. He was trying to make himself, he was trying to communicate, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't make the clear speech sounds. And at that point, I thought, no, my child needs help. And I think for the younger 2, I was aware, probably a little bit more aware, because I'd already been through this once. And certainly my youngest son, who's just started, I was aware before he went, he's 4 just now, before he started nursery, I was aware that he could barely string 2 words together. And yeah, and that's not great for a young child trying to make friends at nursery. So I'd been raising concerns since then, and he has come on since through nursery, because the nursery staff have been fabulous. I'd made contact with the kind of parental advice line for speech therapy in my area, and again, they were great, but he still needed that extra bit of help. So it's taken a while. The actual referral process this time was fairly quick. We were very, very lucky. Our referral was put in with my child in September, October time last year. I had contact with speech therapists in November, and that's in starting now. So we have been very fortunate, very lucky.
Yeah, so that seems a better picture than what we're seeing in terms of the numbers that we've got. I mean, what impact do you think that has? I'm taking myself back to that moment on that play date you're talking about with your wee 4-year-old, and that for him struggling just to, I mean, not only I guess frustration that comes with that, because we all want to be understood, we all want to be heard, but what was that like for him? Did you talk to him about it, and what was the sort of general feeling you were getting?
I certainly. My husband and I both felt that all three of them have been very frustrated at not being able to make themselves clear, make themselves understood. And I think our concerns as well were that their children would not be able to be understood in an emergency. They wouldn't be able to make their needs known at nursery or at school. And we were also quite concerned for kind of reading and writing development, looking at a more holistic picture. If my child cannot pronounce the word snake, how are they going to be able to spell it or read it or recognise it and make that link between what they are saying and hearing and what is written down on a page in front of them?
And just as part of that, Gabby, I mean, we all want to be, particularly at that age, you're learning by the sort of social grouping. So you want to be, these kids you want to be the same. You don't want to be different. So if there's anything that is a sort of slight difference, I guess, that causes, even at that young age, a little bit of, I guess, what does it cause? What do you see? What are you hearing?
Well, it was interesting to hear what Glenn said about 89% of staff, because I absolutely agree with that. And it's shocking in this country that we've got 275,000 children, awaiting or having had a diagnosis. But the importance of speech and language is so underrated, and it's fantastic to hear Glenn put it down quite succinctly. Children need to be understood. They need to be able to express their thoughts and their ideas. They need to have secure social interactions and emotional security. And these are the building blocks for their development, their self-esteem, their independence, their confidence. And Kathy's, quite rightly, was worried about her children, feeling alone, anxious, stressed. That can lead to all sorts of things, not eating, not sleeping. So, I mean, with the 2-year-olds, what we've seen is that our 2-year-olds have come back from COVID and they're older, and they seem to have missed out with the playing and the learning and the socialising and the developing of their confidence, because not every parent has the skills and understands the importance of that bonding, the eye contact, the chatting to them, the songs, the stories. So, there's so much in speech and language. Speech and language, basically, people not in the sector wouldn't understand that speech and language is not just, do they have a lisp, do they have a lazy tongue. Speech and language can diagnose additional needs. Speech and language can improve a child's confidence. And, we want our children to grow up in Scotland being confident, being happy. We don't want children who can't be understood.
Glenn, you're looking to come in there. On you go, Glenn.
Yeah. Thank Gabby. That's very well put. And I suppose what not everybody realises is how critical speech language communication is for children's development. I was a speech language therapist practicing for 23 years, and I've saw this time and time and again. It's not just another branch of learning; it's foundational for these kids' learning and their well-being and their future life chances. And actually, at our core, as being a human, humans we long for connection. When the connection isn't there, we can feel isolated, frustrated, and distressed. And Kathy, I'm delighted to hear your positive experience. That's what we want to see more of in Scotland. Generally speaking, people are taking a lot longer to get access to speech and language therapy, but I'm really pleased to hear about your story.
Go on, Gabby.
Sorry. One of the things I wanted to say was that, if they're missing these links in their development and they're not becoming confident, it can lead to what's termed a challenging behaviour. And in actual fact, every form of behaviour is a communication thing. So if a child is frustrated, they might hit out, lash out. So you've got that to deal with, as well as finding out and trying to, unravel what really is going on in that little person's head, and trying to discover what it is that they need. And that can be really difficult if you have a child that doesn't know how to communicate with you. for them and their families.
Yeah, and as we were saying, it's that idea of connection. And Glenn, you were saying that about just the most sort of basic form of just feeling as though you're getting back what you want to put out. And the most basic form of that is being able to talk to somebody if you're that age. I'm really interested to hear, as always with these conversations, we could stretch them out and talk about them for an hour. But we've only got a couple of minutes left. And I want to hear about VoiceBox, Glenn. This is your new campaign. Talk to us a little bit about that and I guess what you're trying to achieve with that.
Yeah, thanks, Connie. I think the VoiceBox is a national joke competition for primary school age kids, and the purpose is to raise awareness of the joy and the importance of communication. And we launched at Churnside Primary School in Glasgow on Monday, and that was really brought to life at that event. There was loads of laughter, there was fun, there was connection. But of course, there's a serious message that there's such a large number of kids with communication needs in Scotland. We've got to act to improve their well-being and learning and future life chances. So VoiceBox is there to raise awareness of some of the issues. It's also to raise awareness of what we can do to improve these children's communication. Because the great news is that this area of child development is the one area that's most amenable to change if they get the right support. So we're trying to get the messages out, and it's a fun and light way to do that. So we're hoping lots of schools across Scotland will have joke competitions, will send us in their favourite joke, and then that can lead to a final in the Parliament on the 6th of June, which is going to be an amazing event where there'll be magicians and lots of prizes that they can access. So that's our plan, Connie. But it's a serious message behind it.
It just really briefly, if there are people listening to this and they think, how can I improve? If we've got a youngster, a young person who's maybe just beginning to learn to speak or say the odd word, what can they do to make sure that they're doing their very best for them?
Well, Kathy alluded to this earlier. Do you know what? If you've got a concern about your child's communication, pretty much all the services, speech and language therapy services in Scotland have a helpline. Google your local speech and language therapy service. You can phone up and speak to a qualified therapist. Doesn't mean you have to go and see them. It's just getting advice, reassurance, and signposting or education. Not all kids need direct support from speech and language therapist. Also to add in, BBC have a fantastic website called Tiny Happy People. Have a look at that. It is packed full of advice and videos about how to support your kids. But at the core of this is about trying to spend time with your kids every day, special time, setting aside television screens just to get down to their level, play with them, communicate with them, have fun. There's great joy to be found in communication and commenting on what they're doing and putting language into their head.
Commentating on their every move.
Yeah.
It's a good start of it. Listen, thank you for that, Glenn. I appreciate your time.
Pleasure, thanks.
Glenn Carter, their head of Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists in Scotland. And Kathy, thanks so much. Good luck with the appointment.
Thank you very much. I couldn't have done this without the absolutely fabulous speech therapists. They have changed my kids' lives.
Oh, amazing. That's lovely to hear. Kathy was talking about her youngest who is going through or trying to go through speech therapy at the moment. And Gabby, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Connie. It was good to talk about and raise awareness of this serious issue. We just need to invest more funds.
Absolutely.
Our health boards need to get more money from the government, and we need to get more qualified, experienced staff and more training.
Right. Well, speaking of that, just a spokesperson for the Scottish Government said the COVID pandemic has impacted young children in a number of ways, including speech and language development. We want to ensure that every child has the best possible start in life and any developmental concerns are identified as early as possible. This is why we've increased our health visiting workforce by more than 500 since 2014 to try and support parents in their own home. Right, it is 10:52.
Guiding you
Sunday, January 28th, Hollywood. Haley J is coming to Memphis Wrestling. Plus, the return of James Ellsworth. Get your tickets right now at memphiswrestling.tv.
And don't forget about mornings as well, between 9 and 12 every day. But you're listening to that right now with me, Connie McLaughlin. Still to come before 12.
I need somebody to get it going on in this party.
Our weekly consumer surgery returns, giving you the chance to get advice on any bills, returns, shopping rights, anything that you have of a consumer nature. Martin James will be here to answer your questions. You can give him a call right now, actually, 08085 92 95 00, or send him a text on 80295.
Get in touch with BBC Radio Scotland.
You can call our free phone number on 08085 92 95 00.
You can text on 80295. Network charges apply.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Mean, stingy, cheap. Over the years, Scots have had to put up with their fair share of stereotypes. That's definitely true. And according to new research commissioned by Channel 4, those tired tropes aren't in danger of disappearing anytime soon. Apparently, top advertising executives admitted to using stereotypes when including Scottish accents in their campaign, saying they lend themselves particularly well to banking ads due to the perception of Scottish people being really tight. Outrageous or accurate? Here to discuss is marketing CEO Ruth Mackay. Morning, Ruth.
Good morning.
And social psychologist at the University of Glasgow, Professor Catherine Lido. Morning, Catherine.
Good morning.
Right, Ruth, is this outrageous or accurate? And I mean as in not necessarily the trope itself, because we can go into where the sort of origins of that in a second. But is actually that, some of these advertisers, are they doing this still in 2024?
I think fewer and fewer are using stereotypes in their advertising. And one of the reasons for that is I don't think that particularly resonates, particularly with a younger audience of people. So I do think it's becoming less and less common. But I think that report was really accurate in the fact that it's actually just really lazy to pull on sort of very old-fashioned stereotypes of any group of people, to be honest. But from an advertising point of view, what they're trying to do is obviously resonate and reach a particular audience that people will quickly recognise it. And I think that's sometimes the temptation then. It's a quick and easy sort of dirty way of doing that.
Catherine, what is it about a stereotype that sticks?
Well, stereotypes are very sticky. That's the nature of them. And it's important to say that they're not always negative in terms of psychological terms. They help us categorize the world around us. So we might have a stereotype of dogs or tables, but they can, especially around people, have very negative connotations. So they help our brain process things more quickly. They help us know what to expect, but they can also, they're generalizations, so they can lead us to very lazy thinking.
I was having a little look as to why or where the stereotype came from about Scottish people being stingy, because honestly, I've had that. I used to live in England, and that is something that has been levelled at me, not me personally, but this idea of you being Scottish, you better get around in type of thing, as a joke, but still is, as a conversation, there are things that people will say. And I was looking at this, and apparently Scottish Presbyterian Protestantism, which was taught that excess is immoral. So many people up here, apparently the idea of anything extravagant like clothes or habits or things that would, look that we were being showy, it was forbidden, and this is where this came from. Catherine, can you shed any light on that? Is that what you understand, or did this come from somewhere else?
I think a lot of people think has to be a kernel of truth in a stereotype, but that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes they do have historical reasons, and I did see that as one, and some other people said about poverty and other reasons why that might be. But I think sometimes cultural stereotypes just arise, and they can be spread through families, through media. They can also be adjusted through personal experience. So everybody will have a slightly different stereotype based on their own personal experience.
What other accents, Ruth, tend to be stereotyped in when it comes to selling things in your experience?
I think one of the was, sort of that Yorkshire accent of people maybe being quite thick or, again, quite stingy and things. And I do think that in the past, advertising has leaned a lot into stereotypes, and it's probably part of the reason why those still exist and sort of reinforces them.
It's funny, isn't it? Because as soon as you said Yorkshire, and by the way, I used to live in Yorkshire. As soon as you said that, though, I thought tea, which means something somewhere in terms of advertising's working.
Yes, absolutely. There's a big campaign on TV just now that has Patrick Stewart in it, and that's probably why you're thinking of it, because that's Yorkshire tea.
Other teas are available, of course.
Absolutely. But it does show you how powerful advertising still is. And I think particularly now, because when I think about when I was growing up and I was born in the 80s, we predominantly just saw adverts in the ad break on telly, whereas now our children are on social media and are bombarded with advertisements. So they do carry a lot of power, but I would totally agree that they don't have to be negative, and actually we can promote positive stereotypes and traits of people through advertising. And I think that's where the big successful brands will be succeeding.
Just really quickly, Catherine, can we challenge them?
Absolutely. And I think she's right. Advertising is a great force for perpetuating stereotypes, but it can certainly challenge them. And that report was really interesting in terms of, Black Lives Matter leading to more diverse representations, the Paralympics leading to more disability representation. So they can be really positive as well as negative.
Thank you for that, Catherine. You know that music, it means we're nearly near the news. So I've got to say thank you to both of you, Ruth Mackay there and Professor Catherine Lido. Do you agree when it comes to stereotypes? Is it time that we got rid of them? Or actually, do you think some of them are pretty spot on? 80295 if you want to enjoy that, involve yourself in that conversation. The news is next. Even looking out the window, you can still see the glistening roofs of the buildings here in Glasgow. -7 it was when I got in the car this morning, so hopefully it's warmed up a little bit where you are. You are listening to BBC Radio Scotland. It's Connie with you until 12 o'clock today. Still to come in the next hour, though. An unbelievable stories. Police investigate a virtual sexual assault of a young girl's avatar in the metaverse. Struggling to understand what that is. Maybe you've never heard of that before. We're going to look into that in more detail and find out actually if it is possible to keep our kids safe online, especially in the new world of virtual reality. Plus,
I need somebody to get it going on in this party.
The rights expert Martin James takes all your questions shortly in this week's Consumer Surgery. We've already got a question in regarding car purchases and how you get a deposit back, but there's still lots of time to get in touch. Give them a call, 08085 92 95 00, or you can send a text on 80295. Plus, you might have heard this in the news, but the Welsh rugby player Lewis Rees-Zammit, he's announced a career change to American football. He was once the big name of Welsh football, sort of starlet coming through, and he's decided to turn his back on all that and become an American football player. So we're going to talk about what it's like to make big life changes. All that to come before 12.
All the conversations that matter.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
I'm just trying to say how.
Something stirred within me. You were standing sultry
11:10. I hope you're doing well. And this is your opportunity. This is your moment. If you've got anything that's been bugging you, right, when it comes to consumer issues, then you've no excuse then to give us a call, 08085 92 95 00, because we have our expert extraordinaire when it comes to anything consumer related, Martin James, back with us. Hi, Martin.
Hello, Connie.
Right, we've got lots of texts as well. So 80295 number, 80295 is the text number if you want to send Martin a text in. Should we just get straight to the texts?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Right, okay, here we go. This one, and we've no name on this actually, but they are talking about car finance. We were chatting a little bit about that earlier. But this person says, bought a car on finance, paid a deposit of £1,500 plus an extended warranty for 2 years for £500. The dealership gave a 3-month warranty as well. Okay. After picking up the car, I drove it home, felt as though it was misfiring a bit, so took it to my local garage who identified some faults after being diagnosed. After discussing it with the dealer and the finance company, the car was returned to the dealer who agreed to undertake the repairs using their own workshop. Right, you following?
Yep, just about.
They had the car for 4 weeks. When they informed me that the car was ready for collection, I drove the 100 miles to collect the car. Driving back, the car was not performing well and the engine was noisy. Again, contacted the dealer and updated the finance company. The dealer recognised that the repair required wasn't fully undertaken by their workshop. They've agreed under the warranty to approach my garage to undertake the repairs, pending a quote being submitted by the garage. Right. Meantime, I'm paying finance for a car that I can't use with confidence. I have the car, I've had it for 2 months. What are my rights? Can I return the car to the dealer and ask for my deposit back and claim for the finance company's payments that I've made? So basically, he or she's got a car and it's not working, I guess, to the terms of what they've signed on this agreement. Where does this person stand on that, Martin?
Well, do you know, Connie, if ever there was anything that illustrated what I was saying before about how much I hate these deals,
exactly,
about how complicated they are, I think this case really, really highlights that. Now, one of the complexities here is you've got two businesses involved in the equation. You've got the garage, the dealership that the car was purchased from, and you've got a finance agreement. So in theory, you can take your car back and it's being repaired, but you're still paying monthly despite the fact you can't drive anything. So therein lies like one of the big problems here. But let's cut all of that rubbish out and focus on your consumer rights. The important thing here is if you get a car on finance or if you buy it outright, first things first, in the first 14 days, you can cancel the agreement. You can change your mind. You don't have to give a reason. That's what the law says. Beyond that, the various consumer laws that we've got, the Consumer Rights Act and things, govern when goods or services that you buy aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So how you're paying for it is largely irrelevant. The car here isn't working. So when you take it back, the dealership has a responsibility to repair that. But if it still can't sort things out after the first 30 days, they've got one crack at repairing or replacing it. But after that, you're entitled to go back and get a full refund. Now, unpicking these deals is really, really complicated. What I tend to say to people is get the regulated business involved, get the credit company, contact them and say, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. I want to cancel and get out of the agreement. They can then weigh in with the garage and kind of act on your behalf to kind of help extricate you from it. It's really, really complicated, but don't give up. If you're not happy, just say, I've not got what you sold me. I want you to take it back and just let's go back to as if this had never happened before. You can take the complaint further. You can complain about the credit company to the financial ombudsman if you're not getting anywhere. And it might be worthwhile just popping down a bit of this in writing just so there's a record of that. But this is why this whole industry needs to change. And I'm speaking to the powers that be to try and make it a lot more simpler as we speak.
Is it a case of just trying to be persistent in these situations? Which is annoying, but sometimes it can be really effective.
Yeah, it really is. And last week I was chatting to Kay and I confessed that I'm kind of like the worst offender because I come on the show and give all this advice and then, it gets to 8 o'clock in the evening and I'm tired and, I just want to have a glass of wine and not make a complaint. But So make it as simple as possible. You only need to spend 5 to 10 minutes to just jot down a couple of bullet points about what's gone wrong, what you're not happy with, and any kind of numbers that relate to kind of the car or the deal or anything along those lines. That's all you need. A little bit of research online as well. I've just shared my on social media. If you go in armed with that, then the company knows not to mess with you because they know that you're well informed. So just 10 to 15 minutes is all you need to kind of armour yourself in order to make the complaint. It doesn't have to be a massive, great big industry. Sometimes these companies aren't particularly good, but you can always shop them to trading standards if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing as well.
Okay, we've had this text in from Fiona in Inverness who says, "Hi Martin, I recently received a perfume from a very lovely perfumery and candle shop. It's beautiful but not quite my taste. I don't have the receipt as it was a gift. Do you think it's possible to at least get an exchange for this? I don't want to go back to the person and hurt their feelings. Are there any special rules when it comes to returning a perfume? I took the plastic tape off it because I wanted to smell it in the first place, but it's still in the box. Where does she stand?"
Do you know, this is such a good question, and needless to say, I get loads of questions about this at this time of year.
Wonder
Fiona,
why, Santa?
I feel your pain, Fiona. As it all depends on the retailer. Some of them can be, quite reasonable. When I spoke to MAC, who do the makeup, and they were actually quite reasonable about returning makeup that had been open, which I thought was a complete no-no. So it all depends. But as a general rule, if you've broken the seal, so to speak, then the company will assume that you've sprayed it. And from their perspective, it's okay. Well, even if we can sell this on, it'll be at a loss. So they will sometimes say no if you're not the person that's actually made the purchase. I totally understand if you don't want to go back and confess to the person who bought it. I would just say that there's a huge resale market, even for perfumes or things that have barely been opened. So you might not be able to get a return with a retailer, but you might find that you're able to sell it for maybe a tenner less on the resale market, as long as you point out that it's not being used and it's a full bottle. So have a look at maybe selling it on that way.
That's tricky, isn't it? Because again, I get what Fiona's saying. You don't want to be rude and go back because perfumes are expensive as well. So you want to be making sure that either you're using it or, you can exchange it or get one that you actually are going to use because,
Oh gosh, you're so right. And I was one of those people. I was a bit cynical, so when I started kind of writing about things like this, and I was doing a column on for the Times on selling things secondhand, and I was looking around and thinking, people will never buy all of this stuff. Trust me, if you've got it, someone out there will want it. I'm constantly astounded by what people will buy. And actually, if you think about it, because perfumes and aftershaves are so expensive, there's a whole range of people out there who don't want to pay full price, who are waiting for someone like you to come on and offer a cheaper version of something that, to all intents and purposes, is pretty much the same. It's just got the cellophane off it.
Yeah.
So there will be people who are willing to buy it. But again, I would say if you are going to sell this stuff online, just make sure you have a look at the buyer-seller agreements and you post the goods as per the instructions on the website, because I do see lots of disputes about things not turning up or being broken. So just be a little bit cautious if you are going to sell it on.
Okay. Switching up slightly, right? I want to talk a little bit about the winter heating payments. We can look, I'm just saying, I was looking out the window and I can see how cold it is. I think many people will be having to, if they can afford it, crank the heating up a little bit today because it's so cold. What help is out there on offer for people?
Well, it can be a little bit overwhelming, and I know how cold it is in Scotland at the moment. My mum's best mate Debbie is listening in John O'Groats. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
And it's it is ludicrously cold out there now. What really drives me mad as well is, particularly whenever I'm writing about kind of the cold weather payments, is a lot of our media, which won't come as a surprise to listeners, is very England centric. So you often hear about all of kind of the offers that are available in England and Wales, but actually in Scotland, it is a slightly different story. The simplest thing to do is to go onto the Gov Scotland website, where they've got kind of a list of some of the payments that are available. There are payments, if you are in receipt of any benefits, there are cost of living payments. Now, they should be automatic and should come through to you as part of, the usual channels that you receive your benefits through. In Scotland, there isn't a cold weather payment that you get in other parts of the UK. That's the one that you'll hear about that kicks in after 7 days of the temperature being at a certain level. There's a one-off payment of £55.05. I've double-checked this today. That should be reaching people by the end of January. Now, I have heard from quite a lot of listeners in Scotland who've said that they haven't received the payment yet and they're getting a bit nervous. If you contact the organisation through which you usually receive any benefit payments, pension credits, things along those lines, then they should be able to kind of track down what's going on. But stripping all of this aside, because there'll be countless listeners who are struggling financially but don't receive benefits or aren't, in their 70s or qualify for some of the other payments. If you pop onto the regulator's website, it's Ofgem, and type into any search drive financial difficulties, you will find a list of all of the grants and the payments and the options that are available to you that energy companies have to come up with. Now, I mentioned before, sometimes when you go and speak to an energy company, going in so that you're forearmed is a good way to, not get fobbed off. Mm-hmm. You'll find on there's a whole list of things that cover kind of the various options that are available to you. There are some grants that are available through energy companies. There are other reductions in payments. Financial difficulties. I get loads of people who say to me, I'm not in financial difficulties. I'm struggling to just kind of get through each month. If you have very little money left over once you've paid out all of your essentials every month, you meet the definition of financial difficulties. Have a little mini budget just covering your ins and outs. Have that on standby because your energy company will ask for a little bit of information about your payments. They have an obligation to come up with the best deals for you. That might mean reduced prices, better tariffs, other bits and pieces. They have to come up with a solution for you to reflect your finances. So if you are struggling, even if you don't get benefits, even if you're kind of doing okay, but money's just a bit tight, contact that energy company today. I don't have a solution for getting through to them on the phone other than to say that we are onto the regulator about poor service with energy companies, but do persist if you are struggling.
Speaking of the cost of things, we've been talking about that for the last couple of hours in different ways and about different topics. This story caught my eye this morning in The Guardian about the cost of funerals reaching a record high. Not the cheeriest of subjects, but again, something that, a lot of people will be in the process of or thinking about or trying to plan for. What happens if you're in that situation where a loved one passes away and you don't have the money there to pay for it? Because it's an expensive business, isn't it?
It really is, Connie. And this is one of those subjects that none of us like talking about. But actually, I'd strongly recommend that if you are seeing family or you're popping around to as a family, just have a chat about things like this, because a lot of the disputes I see are after the fact. You get all kinds of problems to do with, wills not being issued or money not being available or, people falling out. It makes sense to just have some basic provisions in place. But this report in The Guardian said that the cost of funerals have gone up. The average funeral costs about £4,100, which is a massive increase.
I saw that number, right? And I actually thought it was round the wrong way. That's a staggering amount of money. What happens if people don't have that?
There are some options available, for very reduced price burials. But then the problem is, family feel that they've somehow let that person down. You haven't. It's not your fault that, funeral costs are just so ludicrous. But here's something to bear in mind. I mean, again, without kind of being a morbid, telling a morbid story, my brother died at the start of the pandemic. And it was a challenging time, but it brought us all together as a family. And we had to kind of deal with a situation where we couldn't have a big funeral because of the rules that were in place. Now, in a weird kind of way, that kind of set us free, because we had 20 minutes for the funeral. We had a limited number of guests, and that meant that we focused on the things that matter, about remembering in very brief terms and celebrating somebody's life. But we didn't have big costs with flowers. Everybody said the funeral was much better for being shorter. They don't need to go on for ages. We were able to live stream it, which was very cheap, so people who couldn't attend were able to go. And actually, it focused us in on the things that really, really mattered. The problem with funeral costs is when you turn up, you're weak and you're vulnerable, and the people will be very, very nice to you. It's their job, but they are also salespeople, and they know that when you're weak, you will agree to things that you wouldn't necessarily agree to if you were in a clear frame of mind. So you buy more expensive coffin, or the cost of an urn for ashes is ludicrous. So be aware when you go in, if you are speaking to a funeral directors, that they will try to upsell things. Don't agree at that particular moment in time to anything, and go away and talk about the matter with your family, because actually funerals are for the living, and the most important thing to bear in mind is once you've covered the basics of cremations or burials, it's all about you celebrating that person. And maybe the best way to do that isn't in a big expensive church or room to hire. It's basically sitting with the people that you love and having a wake and celebrating that person's memory with some homemade sandwiches.
Yeah, these are conversations that you don't really think about until you're in that situation, and then it becomes very sort of crystallised and really into sharp focus, doesn't it? I'm sorry to hear about your brother.
Yeah, it is. There are very challenging times out there for lots and lots of people. And I would say as well, I'm a passionate believer in helping and supporting people who might be struggling or might be having a difficult time at the moment. Lots of people who are struggling mentally don't necessarily give open signs of doing that. Yeah. But there are amazing free organisations. I can't praise them enough. Great ones for people who are struggling with their mental health. There are also a range of wonderful, wonderful charitable organisations that are helping you if you're struggling with grief or you don't feel that you can cope. I'd strongly recommend having a look at the ones that are available in your local area, because you might not feel like you need it, but actually it might be possible just to go and have a chat with people in your local area. And face-to-face contact at times like this is really important. It is the one thing that's going to happen to all of us, and there's no getting away from it. So making a few preparations and planning for it and seeking help if you're struggling is the best way forward, but you are not alone, so don't be alone.
I think we covered quite a lot of bases there in 20
we
minutes.
Really did we?
Listen, great to speak to you as always, Martin. Thanks so much for your time. All the best.
Thanks so much, Connie.
Martin James there, consumer expert. Right, it is just coming up to 11:30. After me at 12, as always, it's Lunchtime Live, and Vary's with us to tell us what's coming up. Hello, Vary.
Hello, yes, the government's Rwanda bill returns to the Commons today after all the drama last night with that rebellion by Tory MPs, including 2 deputy chairmen who resigned their posts over it. No doubt that'll also be featuring in today's Prime Minister's questions. We will be crossing live to that at midday. It will also be over the weather, causing disruption in many parts of the north of the country. We'll be hearing from our reporters in Aberdeen, Inverness, Orkney and Shetland. It's a real contrasting picture because it's a beautiful day here, which I don't think we expected either.
What we were discussing this morning on Good Morning Scotland about the temperature. So I was -7 this morning when I left the house.
I think I was -4.
-4. I think Laura was saying she was -3 or something as well. So I mean, it's a chilly, cold day. But you're absolutely right. I think lots of different parts of the country are experiencing different things. But yeah, we will keep an eye and let you know what's happening weather-wise, of course, across the day. What else is coming up?
Well, a victory for the consumer. Some good news. Wizz Air is being made to pay out compensation over flight cancellations, and also more good news perhaps, depending on your perspective. Ryanair says it is willing to sell flights at a loss over the winter to keep the numbers up, but not everybody's happy about that.
OK, thank you for that. We'll look forward to it. Lunchtime Live, 12 o'clock this afternoon. Stay with us. There's lots more to come before that, including this from Rachel Stevens. It's Sweet Dreams, My LAX. We're going to get
Tom likes collector card games, and Jim likes video games. To make a truly great game, I was thinking you could combine them. Eh? I meant combine the games, not the kids!
The new Hyperscan video game system is here, featuring X-Men. It's where collectible card games meet video games. Scan your character, battle and gain power, rescan to save the power permanently back to your card. Hyperscan video game system with 1 controller and X-Men game pack. Other games coming soon, sold separately, rated E10 plus to teen. Hyperscangaming.com.
0805 92 95 00.
You can text on 80295. Network charges apply.
Mornings on BBC Radio Scotland.
It's just after 11:30. Our next conversation, right, includes some sensitive subjects, including sexual assault. So if there are any children or young people that you think may find this upsetting, you are very welcome to rejoin us in about 10 minutes' time.